Section 6.2 begins on page 201, and we start to look at the components that actually allow us to connect computers to share the resources that we talked about with Section 6.1. And so the first that we're going to look at or mention is the network interface card. Now in this image, the network interface card is only connected to this desktop client computer. And that's a little bit misleading. I don't think they intend to be misleading, because they do say in the little paragraph there, 6.2.1, that you can have a wireless NIC, network interface card, also in these clients. But what they don't draw is they don't draw the wireless network interface card over here with the laptop computers. So to connect either over a physical cable to a switch, or to connect wirelessly, sorry, that is a bad drawing of a radio wave, that's a little bit better, to an access point that is then connected to the switch, you have to have a network interface card. Most computers today come with them built in. Early computers did not. One of my first laptops only had a 56K modem that was a dial-up modem, and I had to buy a Ethernet network interface card, and I had to buy a wireless version for the laptop to be able to connect to wireless networks. But today they all come built in, and it's just assumed that it's part of the computer. The next piece that we've already discussed when we were looking at the fundamentals of a network is the actual circuit that connects these devices. You remember, and I know you're probably tired of seeing me draw this, but the drawing that I always put up when you're connecting two devices on a network, you've got computer A and then you've got computer B, and this is the circuit. And so what we're looking at then is, in this drawing up above, the circuit is the network cable on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side it is the radio waves that is allowing the information to move from these wireless devices to the access point through the switch and then on over to the network server to access information across the network. So your network circuits in general for the wired side is going to be unshielded twisted pair, and that's defined on your book, in your book on page 201. Unshielded twisted pair. Sometimes you hear people call this Ethernet cable, but it's not Ethernet cable. It is a unshielded twisted pair cable that is used on Ethernet, and that's really a sort of a pet peeve, but it's kind of one of those things where people misuse the word. But if you call something an Ethernet cable, people are going to know what you're talking about. If you call it unshielded twisted pair, they probably wouldn't know what you meant. But that's what it actually is. It's unshielded twisted pair. And then on the wireless side, you're using the radio waves at different frequencies to do different things. So different protocols, if you are familiar with them, 802.11a, b, and g and n. B, G, and N all operate at the 2.5 gigahertz range, or 2.4 gigahertz range. A and N will also run at a 5 gigahertz range. So it depends on which protocol as to the frequency range that you're going to be using to actually connect over here wirelessly to the access point. Now the device in the middle here, the switch, is not the only network device that allows us to connect. There are switches, which is the primary device that's used now in networks, but the older networks device was called a hub, and a hub is just simply a dumb connection. A switch will do some routing, and in fact, the more advanced telecommunications gets, switches are routers, and they're routing switches, or whereas before we started out with dumb hubs, which a hub was just a device that connected everybody to everybody. So you got like a main bus in here, and these computers are all connected to the main bus line. They call it a bus, but it was a main single connection. And so then a message is sent across the network, and it goes to every computer on the network. Because when it comes down this line, it hits this bus, and it goes back out every other line on the network. So the computer has to hear every bit of traffic on the network, but filter out only those that are for that specific computer. What the switch does is it's a little bit smarter than that, and it will look at the IP addresses or the MAC addresses, and it will filter and send only the information to a computer that should go to that computer. And so the switch is a little bit smarter than the hub, but that was an older piece of equipment. So in this middle area right here of this network drawing, what you have is switches and wireless access points. And a wireless access point, most of you probably already have those at home in your own wireless networks at your house. So you can read about those and learn a little more about them here in the book. But most of you already know how those are set up and how they operate. If you move on over to around page 206, we start to talk about the network operating system. And the network operating system is basically the software for platforms like Windows, Linux, or Apple that allows you to move through the OSI stack. And so the software is going to handle all of the stuff in the middle. And so it's going to set everything up, and it's going to be able to operate down, across, and up from sender to receiver. But it's also going to set up things that are very useful for networks. It's going to set up something that's called, for Windows computers, it's called Active Directory. And this is defined on page 206. Now, directories are important because they allow you to assign resources to specific directories. And so then when a new user comes on, you can give them a profile, and the profile will determine the directory that they're in. And so then whatever, if you assign them to this profile and it has access to resources 1, 2, and 3, this one may only have access to 1, that one may only have access to 2. When you assign them to a directory by their profile, it determines the resources on the network that they're able to have access to. So I have faculty access on campus, and that's defined by Active Directory. So that's what directories are for, and they're part of the network operating system, so that when a client logs in, you use your username and password to log in through the access point, into the switch, over to the server. The server automatically only gives me access to certain pieces of information. Okay? And even if I log in from a desktop computer through the switch and come over, I still only get access to certain information. But then, if someone else logs in from a different directory to the access point through the switch to the server, they're only going to get access to their specific resources, the hardware, printers, the file storage, the databases, the software licenses that they have been given rights to. And they're given rights through the network profile, and the network profile is defined on page 207, network profile. Okay, and then the directories description is on page 206. And so those are two key important factors here about network operating systems that you need to keep in mind.